I really want to make sure we're doing it in a respectful manner, because everybody should have an opportunity to be able to say, have an opportunity to say what's on their mind, but do it in a way that can be productive. So let's seek solutions. Whoops, can you go back one, Kelly? And the other thing I would add is, if you've got a specific site that you're focused on for tonight, use that as a pivot point to think about how we might take and all learn from those kinds of situations, because everybody's got a different situation, and we don't want to talk about specific sites tonight, but we want to talk about how do we learn from our past sites and our past events to develop into something bigger. Open communication, we always need to understand and try to communicate. We were just talking in our last meeting about communication, and if you're human, we all know that sometimes we speak, but other people don't listen or aren't really hearing. Oops, I'm sorry, was that Kelly? Okay, we'll keep going. Next slide, Kelly. There we go. Okay, let's go into agency updates. Big shout out to Pam McQueer and Jennifer Carney. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are rock stars and did a fantastic job with the PFAS 101. Appreciate your ability to come on and tell your stories. I think that was huge, and part of the reason that it was such a great webinar for homeowners was because of the openness, honesty, and your ability to share your stories. I think that really made it a fantastic PFAS 101. So thank you for that. I don't even see Jenny on, so hopefully she's on. Pam, are you on here?
Pam is not able to attend tonight either.
Bummer. Okay, next time you guys see Pam and Jenny, tell them thank you. So new sites, we're still adding sites. We're up to 167. Cherry Capital Airport is officially added. The U.S. Coast Guard there next to the Cherry Capital Airport has also been added as new sites since the last time we met. Forest Waste Superfund site, that's not, that one is not a super new site. It's been there for many years and has been a Superfund site, but they have looked for PFAS. I don't believe that it's actually leaving the site. Fensky landfill, again, has been there for years. We don't believe that it's impacting any drinking water wells. It is right on the Grand River, unfortunately. The former Falk Road landfill, we just had a town hall on that last night, and so that was added as a new site. And then one additional one, this Production Rubber Products, is right next door to the Paw Paw Plating. No residential drinking water wells. We're not going to do a town hall, but it is getting added to the MPART site because it's, we've already done the call with local officials through the Paw Paw Plating, which is, I think these two sites are commingled is actually what's going on for that one. You want to do next slide for me? All right, so one of the other things we really wanted to just kind of point out for tonight was that, when we started in November of, which is hard to believe it's been that long already, but when we started November 3rd of 2017, we listed just about anything and everything that had a PFAS result of any kind. So you'll see on here, some of these are community water systems, some of these are surface water, some of these, this is just a snapshot. So we've evolved into the way we list sites, what kinds of sites we're actually listing, so that no longer is this, we're not listing municipal drinking water as sites. We're going more for, we're actually listing PFAS sites that are sources that are doing active investigations that we know about, those are all on this, which is part of the reason we're up to 167 now. So we will continue to evolve, continue to make the data clearer and have it be more transparent to our residents. But that's where we started, which was, like I said, 4 years ago. Seems like a lifetime ago, but 4 years ago we started with 14 locations, and only a few of those were actual what we would consider PFAS sites today. So next slide. Oh, this one is one that is near and dear to my heart. And so this is something that I wanted to talk and kind of do some brainstorming with this group on, is that we're going to be hosting again a Great Lakes PFAS Summit. It's going to be virtual. It's going to continue to be virtual for a couple of reasons. The pandemic is only part of the reason, but Michigan is going to continue, at least if I have anything to say about it, Michigan's going to continue to be a leader for PFAS issues, not only in the Great Lakes state, but for the nation and for the world. And so the best way to be able to get the information out there to reach the researchers, the other states, the other governments, the other affected communities, is to be able to share that virtually. And so, and it's fairly low cost. I think it's $50 a person, which is super cheap for a basically all week conference. And so we're looking at the first week in December. We'll be putting out a call for abstracts. I think we'll be going out shortly. And we'll be looking through abstracts this summer to narrow it down to these particular tracks. So you've got national and international regulations. We wanted to focus on what's going on across the world with PFAS, human health and community involvement, site investigation, treatment technology, which is always going to be one that we want to hammer on hard because we're all looking for solutions. And then materials management and pollution prevention. How do we handle the AFFF that's already in our state? How do we do pollution prevention? How do we do the reduction, minimization, and elimination of PFAS in all of our lives with all of our different products? So those are the kinds of tracks that are out there. Last time, I think we got, Amy, you can probably tell me 100 and 200 different abstracts. I'm trying to remember how many it was last time. A lot of different abstracts that we had to go through to put the PFAS Summit together last time, and it was over 1,000 people that actually attended. So I'm looking for at least that many, if not more. But one of my thoughts was in giving in the charge to this group as the Citizens Advisory Work Group is to engage the public. How do we take this PFAS Summit and, give it a Michigan perspective and show how our citizens have become involved, show how we can educate each other to PFAS situations. And so this is one of the things I want to toss back to this group is, maybe not this meeting, but future meetings. I want to talk about ways that we may be able to put on some sort of a webinar or a type of outreach to our citizens, to our, another PFAS 101 for communities and for our general homeowners. How do we reach them? So I know AJ and I had some conversations about it, and I'd really like to explore that some more with you guys. So we can throw that on the agenda. If we don't have time this month, we can throw it on next month's agenda. But I think there's a lot of issues and a lot of different ways we could take that. So heads up on that. I may be putting some of you to work to help not only promote, but actually participate in this PFAS Summit. And I'm thinking, again, some little testimonial type pieces of how, what happened in your community and how did you guys react and what are the lessons learned, those kinds of things that might be, little clips, maybe they'd be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but something that might be part of this summit. So All right. So I'm going to pass it over to AJ and Ken. Who wants to go first?
Abby, I'm gonna take both roles
Okay.
in case AJ's bandwidth is down or limited. So
Yeah,
start.
AJ's been having a lot of problems with his internet tonight. So I appreciate that, Ken. Thanks.
So the first meeting was the web meeting, and we talked about a lot of good things. But
Ken, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You want to take it?
Yeah.
You're breaking up, AJ.
Yeah, I just drove 15 miles first.
Okay, AJ's still having those connection issues. It sounds like maybe he's in the car driving to try to find a signal or something. But the web.
Yeah, Ken, if you could go with your committee first.
Okay, I'll do that.
I'm 3 minutes. I'm 3 minutes away from a cell tower.
Hey, I'm glad you've got gas.
I'm driving as quickly as I can. Yes.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Kelly, I'm going to put you on the spot then. If you could do two things, I'm going to ask you to do. One is to get to the MPART webpage, and we're going to drill down to show everybody where on the calendar these meetings reside, so that they can get on. Because what I found is if they're calling in or emailing us at there you go, at 4:55, I don't do them service of trying to get to it. So we're going to go to Citizens Advisory Workgroup, and then we're going to go down to meeting materials. And at the very bottom of this is our COG calendar. So that's where these meetings reside, including this meeting. Now, this meeting also resides on the main calendar, but this is how to get to them. And I just wanted to show this to folks, so when they want to join us, they're more than welcome to. And this is where those are. Now, the other thing I want you to do, Kelly, if possible, is to put up those concepts that we talked about, that AJ sent in the email that I believe we pretty well finalized them at our committee meeting today. There's just one correction that I think we want to address, and then share it all with the COG for a recommendation. In the only place that I believe we had some major discussion on, and it's in the bolded area, it says investigations likely to impact 10 or more households. And I believe our consensus was all PFAS investigations that likely impact any household. And with that correction, go through this document. So it would qualify if we thought, and with all the tools that we talked about in the web meeting that are going to be available to residents, they're going to be able to look at their specific locations and get some of this information. But we want to be able to make sure that any household that might be impacted in an investigation is considered and notifications are given, because it's a big challenge. Hundreds, if not thousands, of these sites are going to continue to pop up in Michigan, around the country. And again, I believe many members on this subcommittee and the COG are involved with organizations or with helping the federal government and the state government to understand better how we can inform the public and what the consequences are of having these chemicals in their drinking water. And I just wanted to add, Abby, I did talk to Pam this afternoon. She could not be here. She was going to be interviewed by a national organization that she's affiliated with. And then she found out later this afternoon that that's a subsidiary of an international organization that she is going to be asked to make some presentations to as a general citizen being impacted by toxic chemicals. So,
Wonderful. Sandy's got her hand up.
okay, Sandy?
Yeah, I don't remember if we talked about how exactly is Eagle notifying people?
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet.
Right.
Okay, because
But
isn't that
I-
kind of the $12 million question? Probably costs about that much too, but I mean, I think that's the whole issue is how exactly are they going to notify people? So I don't want to lose sight of that.
No, I think we want to make sure we can agree on what we talked about, and then we didn't firm up any way of how that notification is going to go. But some good examples, as we stated, as at least I stated, was having been on all these meetings. PFAS 101 is a good way to do it. Obviously, as we listen to more of the general discussions, mail is an option. We also have discussed, and it's not on here, but we've also discussed having short videos put together that can explain individual situations that might exist. What is PFAS? And do it in 2 minutes.
But I think what I'm saying is if I'm an impacted citizen, how do I know? I'm not going to go to any of this stuff until somebody calls me and says, hey, by the way, Sandy, your well could be impacted, so don't drink it.
Right.
That's what we need to figure out what to say.
Right. And that's what I was saying. I thought I said, many ways, including mailings, but that'll be another brainstorming session, or if they already have that developed at community health, that can be helpful too. So I agree with you.
Just real quick.
AJ,
Just real quick, what is suggested in just real quick, what's suggested in here is that there be notice made directly by mail to impacted residents, that there be notification to local governments. We had talked about that last time, both health department and local governments, as well as I think there was significant discussion about the importance of letting the media know. And so all three of those sources are in there just as a starting point for conversation. And on top of that, as Ken said, there's other things like short videos that could also be utilized. But those were kind of the three legs that have been discussed in the subcommittee and even in the larger COG. So local media, local government, and direct communications with those potentially impacted.
And we've also talked about the potential or the possibility that local units of government have a better ability to reach out one-on-one with the citizens. If it's not a huge community, I know in Algoma Township, that happened with the local staff, and that gave people some good information. So, Sandy, you got anything else to add?
No, for me, that's the big issue, because I think my experience was not, I heard it from Karen Vorse at Eagle. That's who came to my house. So I just want to make sure that people are getting the information directly. So I'd like to think local, Ken, and I bet there's communities where that works really well. I'd like the idea, like AJ said, that we have a three-prong approach so that we don't have to worry that if one of those legs fails, we have two others that can go to it. So I think the mailing I'm a little worried about, because I don't know how Eagle would decide how many people do you mail something to. So, but I'm glad we're talking about it. That's good.
And that's why we have to flush out that, I believe we have to flush out that overlays on the maps. And if you sit there and listen to all of them, like I shared with the one at Fensky, it's not a whole lot of people that have to be notified, but they do have to be notified when the additional Fensky investigation goes on, in my opinion. So I agree. I mean, we're at ground zero here in the Belmont area, so we know how we don't want it to happen.
And Stacy Taylor has her hand up as well.
Okay, because I can't, for some reason, I can't see whose hands are up. So go ahead, Stacy. You may have to unmute. Are you there?
Yep, I am. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Kind of tech savvy. Two things. First of all, thank you for showing us where to find the link. I know Mary Blanchard and I both had a really hard time finding that today, and I appreciate you pointing that out because some of us aren't as tech savvy as some of the others. We just kind of ran into the notification problem here in Holly. So the meeting was last night, and we want to thank Abby and all of the members of the COG that attended last night. We appreciate that very much. And, you know, our local community wasn't really sure how to notify the folks. And so we ended up putting it on, you know, a couple of different websites on their, you know, their pages, but it was kind of not real easy to find it. If you weren't just looking for some random reason, you had no idea that was there. And the only paper it was in was our local Tri-County Times, which if you don't subscribe to that and pay right now, you don't get a copy of that. So, you know, Mary and I both pretty much, we printed up some papers and we went door to door and said hi to some of our neighbors and the people at risk, wells that have been identified as at risk. And, you know, there's got to be a better way. So I saw something today happened about a website idea of how to notify, and I'm just catching up with emails because I had a couple things I had to do today. But man, I sure appreciate y'all trying to figure out how to do this and do it right, because the people do deserve to, you know, to know. So thank you.
And I thank you for the efforts you've done down there, because sitting in on that meeting, I was very impressed that even your township supervisor was on the call and brought up some points. So
Absolutely.
you know, you guys got the word out.
We're trying.
Okay. Keeping it with generic. Yeah, was somebody else have a hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one other thing as we go through this discussion, Ken. I think there's two situations, and we've got a slide for some of this, but there's the, I think there's like almost a tiered approach to notification. There's the initial notification of, hey, we don't know, we have no data, we don't know who's impacted, we don't know if there's even groundwater impacts, but we're doing some sort of investigation, versus the Sandy situation where, yeah, we know that there's something, we don't know the extent of it, but we know it could be something, and you live right next door to it. Those are different situations. And so we kind of put this slide together because there's really two different things. We're not going to notify a mile radius for if we don't have any data, we don't know if they actually had a release, and we don't have any nearby residential wells. You know, who do we notify, and what would the next message be in A versus in B, where, yeah, we don't have any data, but we know they probably had a PFAS release. It's probably AFFF related. We don't know about residential wells. There is municipal water, but you know, they may or may not be hooked up. So does that notification, as far as who gets notified, how far you notify, and how you notify, differ? And so I'd like some feedback on that, those kinds of scenarios from this group.
Okay, does anybody in the COG have any other questions about that document that was up? And or they're looking for feedback, and we are realizing that the feedback we give in these meetings and all the other meetings is definitely being listened to, and we see very good action being taken from those recommendations. So the floor is open.
I would like to say, just as a qualifier on that slide that was just up there, that, you know, there's a series of, I think, A through F points that would be great to include if they're known. But if they aren't known, I'm not suggesting that we wait until they are known. You know, that initial notice, I think, needs to go out with as much information as possible if we have those, you know, to A through F. This also anticipates ongoing notification. So it isn't just, this is one notification, that's all you get. If there's a round of groundwater sampling of people's residential wells that indicates some significant hits and maybe a bigger problem than we thought about, then that number 3, it indicates that there's a need for ongoing notifications. It's not just that first initial one. And then, beyond just the notifications, what education can we provide? And that Ken has pointed out already, PFAS 101, similar information like that would be really great to have out there as a resource. And then the last point I'll deal with more when I do my subcommittee report, which is continued emphasis on web-based alert systems. And I think there's some progress on that I'll report later. But I just wanted to put those really 4 steps into context for those that haven't seen them before this.
And I would just add, as you made me think about some of the people at the state that are responsible for some of these sites. They've been responsible for them for a long time, and they know them almost like the back of their hand, and may not recognize the need to contact that 1 or 2 people, or even the health department, because they have good data that says this is contained within this location, or the previous contamination was. Doesn't mean, though, that the PFAS was contained. So, Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, if we could pull up the scenario A, scenario B, just to go to Abby's question. Let's slide with scenario A, scenario B.
You guys have me running all over the place.
Yeah. PowerPoint gymnastics. Yeah, so just a couple thoughts on this. I think AJ's point about releasing what's known and what you don't know, both of those pieces of information are valuable. What is not known is also valuable for folks to know. So it, like I say, it's perfectly fine.
Oops, did he drop off?
I accidentally unmuted it or muted him.
You didn't like what he said, huh?
Hold on, Danielle. Kelly's being mean.
I'm all flustered now.
Can he unmute himself? All right, Danielle, I think you got to unmute yourself.
Okay. I was put on a 7-second delay there. That wouldn't be the first time. So so just to Abby's question about scenario A, scenario B, on that scenario A, no data suspected PFAS use industry, no real risk factors that are obvious, but surface water is nearby. That I would not feel like there is notification need for that. I think that's the kind of stuff that could be rolled into just sort of regular check-ins with local groups, local officials. But we have in our watershed, we have sites that fall in that scenario A category kind of all over the place. And I feel like that's pretty early, where there's suspicion, but nothing really beyond that. Scenario B, I feel, is like where it starts to cross over. But the difference there is if there might be residential wells nearby, or there's a question or of residential well contamination, well water contamination, or surface water contamination. I feel like that's a threshold where that is a very initial threshold where reaching out to local officials seems prudent. And then within that group, watershed groups, drain commissioners, water resource commissioners, I feel like those are groups that are appropriate to reach out to. And I know we've talked about, some sort of like rolling, list of these kind of issues as they come up, just put on a web somewhere, just so it's there for people to see but I feel really it's reaching out to those local officials just to get some extra awareness of it, and until there is some reasonable question that it could be affecting drinking water wells or some other well nearby. I feel like it's still pretty early in both of these cases, but it is worth getting other people involved and aware.
Sandy, you had your hand up. Did you take it down?
Well, I did, because Daniel kept saying everything I was going to say, so he kind of stole my thunder. But I was going to say the same thing. The only thing I wonder about with surface water, I'm assuming you're talking lakes, rivers, streams, and I wonder about even just posting, something written that people would see if they entered the lake, river, or stream or fish there, saying that there's an investigation. Just that would probably be enough in those situations. But
Yeah.
I know we're learning more and more about the effects on fish and wildlife, so I wouldn't want to completely ignore that. But I think if it's not affecting human health in residential wells, I'm less worried about the notification than I am on scenario B.
Okay, Charlie.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure can.
I just wanted to respond, I guess, to what Daniel was saying, just maybe to add to rather than contest. It's been my limited experience that certain times, obviously depends on the individual, but in certain situations, a local official may be inclined to keep the wraps on something. They may have some reason for doing that, but it's not always a surefire way of getting the word out, and so there needs to be a selection of methods for notifying. So I've just had some experiences with local officials that they're not going to do anything with it. It's just going to stop right there.
Thank you, Charlie. I have to share that one of the other committee members that couldn't be on, the subcommittee members that couldn't be on tonight, shared a different view and said that not all, the words were, not all local officials are corrupt. So some of them will be helpful. Okay, Bob.
Is it working now?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Just a simple comment. In scenario A and scenario B, we know we have no hard data, period. Okay, we don't know what's going on, so I don't know really how you can do anything in that scenario. That is the root cause of the problem. There seems to be a serious lack of testing, and we need data. That's why I came to this group a year and a half ago, was for information. I didn't know what PFAS was, and I can guarantee you that I know more about PFAS, but I have very few measurements that I can rely on. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Connie.
All right. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. I would just like to suggest to Abby and to the rest of this group that I think you could really streamline this process much more easily. If we could go back to that slide that had A, B, C, D, E, F. A was basically historical records. Any environmental consultant can do a phase 1, which is a review of historical records, in about a day or two. That's all that takes. Once you have the historical records, and by that, I mean, you've got to hit local, you've got to hit state, and you may have to do some FOIAs, but you could get that done in about 2 days for a given site. What PFAS chemicals are likely involved? The ones that are involved depends on your industry. Okay, so you should be able to know with the airport what kind of chemicals they would be using. Landfill's going to be more difficult, but from example, metal plating, you're going to be able to know what type of likely PFAS chemicals were involved. So that's not exactly hard. Extent of contamination, if you're talking about landfills, you should have a pretty good idea with the ones that are still operating, because they have to have monitoring wells all the way around the site. They have to have leachate, but it's up to Eagle to require them to sample for PFAS, which I'm not sure landfills are required to, the ones that are operating are required to do that. And for the other ones that are ready close, get an environmental consultant and have them take monitoring well samples, and they can pretty well figure out which way the groundwater is flowing. So that will give you an idea which households are going to be impacted. What you really need here is just, if I can call it, a real basic phase 1 environmental site assessment and a real basic phase 2 environmental site investigation. And when I was doing this, I've done it for about two and a half decades, you have to get it moving quickly, because your client's gonna, get upset if you don't get it done quickly. So you should be able to make this process much more, to implement it a lot faster. And you need a method of how to do it. And I'd be glad to teach your staff how to do it. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Yeah, you're right. A desk audit of available information and stuff isn't that hard. But that's supposed to be being done by the responsible party, the liable party that caused the contamination. This is their responsibility to put in monitoring wells, to delineate the extent of contamination. So remember, what we're being asked, what you guys are asking from us is, as soon as we send that initial letter asking a company to do an investigation or to do some sort of or maybe we even just send them a letter for information, you guys are asking for notifications. So we're not doing the work. This would all be done by a liable party, responsible party, and then we would wait for them to do that work. And we would notify the community that this work is going to be done. But there's no, would be time in there where the community would be notified and the company be doing whatever they're going to do to delineate that contamination, and then submit their reports.
Abby, what used to be done at EPA is they gave the potentially responsible parties a deadline. So you don't wait 20 years like you waited on Falk Road landfill, waiting for something to be sampled. What you need to do is say, you got 45 days to do a phase 1. Next 60 days is your phase 2. Set deadlines, because otherwise this is going to go on forever. It's up to you to set the deadlines.
I agreed, Connie. We need to do that. It comes down to a matter of resources and then a matter of enforcement. And resources are limited. So we have project managers. Most of our project managers have 400 plus sites each. So, setting deadlines for each one of those is not possible. And so that's why we try to prioritize based on those sites that we think are the greatest risk, and then work our way down the list. And so we would, in this particular case, you would work with what you know, and do those desk audits. But we would, we don't have the funds to do a phase 1 or additional work beyond that at every single site. So, but you've got a lot of great ideas, Connie, because that's exactly what you would do. And it wouldn't be that hard if we had the resources to do it for all of the sites.
And I would just add that's why it's, in my opinion, more critical to get that notification out there initially, if we anticipate that there's going to be an issue. If we're asking somebody to do a study or an investigation, that should clue somebody in to say, citizens, you may need to take some precautionary measures. I had Bill, I think Bill was on here.
Yes, yeah, I'm still here. I'm still waiting. That's okay.
Go ahead.
Let me get my hand down. Maybe not. Okay. Here it is. I just want to talk about the big picture just for a second. Landfills, airports, military sites, municipal sewer discharges. Those are kind of the major spots, I think, that could be looked at as in an overview of those places as soon as possible by the state government once they get funding and enough people to help them do this task. But those things are all sitting there. We've known about them for years. But as far as notice, I mean, those are the places that I think we should focus on. And if we're looking at notice, I'm not impressed with local government and their ability. I feel we can't depend on them to notify their own people. Local governments sometimes have ordinary people. They also have people with agendas. And I agree, they're not all corrupt. I'm kidding, but I just think they have the ability to know when to say. And I know the Eagle knows when there's a duty to notify. And they want us to draw the line in the sand somewhere here. And we need their help too with that. But the responsible parties, we can't rely on them either. I think it comes down to Eagle and the health department and a designated communicator throughout the state. But I was just thinking bigger picture, and I wish I would have mentioned this earlier, but landfills, airports, military sites, municipal sewer droppings that go into rivers. We know where groundwater flow is at these places. And we know PFAS is in landfills. We know it's in the leachates. We know it's at airports that have training with PFAS histories. And we know military sites have it. In fact, Coast Guards do apparently as well. But even regular military that we're more accustomed to, those bases are probably hotspots. And we've known since 2013, 14, whenever this started to be a bigger situation. And then we probably should have moved faster. We haven't, but those are the big areas. And how much communication can we get to those major areas immediately? And how do they fit in the equation of what everyone's talking about here? I think is important to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw Lynn.
Can you hear me?
We can. Is that a Colorado connection?
Yes, it is. I'm only making a comment so I can brag a little bit. I'm sitting on the back porch of our bed and breakfast with all of my family here, all 3 daughters, my husband, so it's wonderful. I wanted to reiterate a couple things. Most of them came up already. I think we're in a hard place. A lot of the reasons that the Wolverine site was actually investigated was because the EPA issued an administrative unilateral order, and it had a lot of teeth in it. And this brings me back to Part 201 and Michigan's laws. And I know that Abby and the DEQ are underneath, Eagle, excuse me, are underneath all of that and the limits of that. But how do we, maybe it's a separate topic, not to act on very soon as well, is who do we pressure the legislature, the governor, head of Eagle? How do we change this fact that there's not accountability and that there's maybe not enough staff or not enough teeth in the law to do enforcement? Because if corporations are just given free reign and they can keep making up excuses and other liable parties, they will. And that's a very important topic that came up tonight, and I'd like to continue and discussing that with others. And secondly, I am old school. When I go to the website, I groan inside. I like something to come in my mailbox There are a lot of people, I'm not saying I'm old, but I'm old school. I like something that comes to my mailbox. Not everybody does, but there is a percentage of people who aren't going to go and look up things on the website. And I'm, again, reiterating that in terms of the ways that we communicate to the public. That's it.
Thank you. I think,
Mhm.
Dan, were you on? Still hand up?
Yeah, it's a new hand. Yeah, so Lynn, you raised a number of good points there. Yeah, that one of those last points you made about just, where do the policies and laws need to be tightened at the legislature level? I think that's a good point to keep in mind for many of us on the call that are involved with, advocacy or policy protection, things like that. And so I think there are good forums to think about that, and I think that's an important dimension. But I want to make sure, Abby, when you were describing, the notification that went out to just again using the Traverse City as the example, but I don't want to get hung up on that too much. But in the Traverse City case, the notification went out to the airport. What you were describing that basically follows that here's what's going to happen, here's what we've notified the airport, here's what happens next, and here's what we know and here's what we don't know. That basic notification, I think in the simplest possible framework, I think that's exactly sort of just the description and the rundown that would be helpful. And in the simplest possible setup, when a notification like that goes out to a polluter, there could just be something as simple as an email list that people sign up for, and then some copy of that notification goes out to, an email list that whatever is aimed at the community. Because then, any number of us around the state would be seeing it, it's out there. People in various communities could see it. Now there's a whole bunch of questions about logistics about that, but that seems like that would be sort of, that's the basic ask I think that a lot of us are getting to is just, here's what we know, here's what we don't know. We notified the polluter and the process is moving forward. There's a lot of other information that's valuable within that, but I feel like that's just sort of the basic information that everybody needs. So it's figuring out how to get people that information efficiently. And to points that Bill and others made that local officials aren't always reliable or what have you. I hear that, and that's why I think a push to those local officials is a good idea always, but then having a voluntary option for people to sign up, I think is a good option. If you get a few hundred people signing up around the state, I feel like that's pretty good coverage. To get the word out around a various spot. So I'll stop there.
Appreciate that, Daniel, though. I think that's really good thoughts. I think the one clarification I would say is if we're contacting a liable party, responsible party, it is because either one, we're trying to get information on a potential situation of a release of hazardous substances to the groundwater, so on, and or we're asking them to do active, not always are we sending them the first letter is probably not always going to be, hey, we think you are a source, do a active investigation. So I think we're engaging in correspondence with them, and so we're trying to get them going. Now, the one thing I will add to this conversation that I thought was very, very interesting today. So you talk about how do we tackle this? There's all kinds of policy issues that go around with 201. It's not the most effective, but I think the way we tackle this issue is maybe we bring it forward as an issue on all fronts. And so in my conversations as MPART director, I have conversations all the time with different organizations around the state. And I have a standing call with the Michigan Manufacturers Association, which represents a lot of different industries across the state. They were very interested when I told them that you guys were going to be talking about this notification process and you guys were going to be coming up with some recommendations. They would like to establish their own subcommittee to, again, help us work on notifications. And so I'd really like to be able to take your notifications and hand it over to them and say, okay, this is what the people are asking. Well, what can you guys as the industries turn around and help us achieve? How can we make sure that the expectations are out there, not only from the public side to make sure that the notifications and the information is getting out there, but the industries also have that same expectations, so that when they start engaging in some sort of an environmental cleanup or whatever, we don't have to work through this process of who notifies who's. They're going to already be there in the community, hopefully notifying everybody at the same time and saying, hey, look, had a release, this is what we're doing about it. This is what we're telling the press. We're working with Eagle, we're working with local health. So I think this is an opportunity, to be honest, because one, I think there's some pretty smart people on that particular subgroup of the Michigan Manufacturers Association that can really get us some practical things on things they could suggest to their industries for notification. And then if we present, the COGS recommendations for notification, then we'll have not only the public expectations, we can talk to industry about it, we can start talking with other groups about, hey, maybe we can come up with a notification process that's simple to, Daniel's point about an email list or something on the website or something like that. Everybody has clear expectations of what it's going to mean, what it might say, and what it does and doesn't say. So just throwing that out as one of those. I think you have these conversations and you really get people thinking about what it means. And I think there's an opportunity here for our industries to be standing up and maybe being a little bit more transparent themselves on what they're doing in their facilities. So I'll throw that out there as something else that I think we have an opportunity to be an agent for change here. So, and I see that got all kinds of hands going, Ken, so you're going to have all kinds of fun getting things. I'll leave it like that.
The first one I thought I saw it pop up and then it went, I didn't see the name again. Was there a Shannon on here?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Hi. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be commenting on here, but my brain is going in a million directions because I do organizing work both on a personal level, like outside of my profession, but I also do it professionally. And my biggest concern hearing what we're talking about right now is the fact that there is a lack of capacity and funding and things like that with Eagle to be able to manage the significant notification process that I think people are wanting and requesting, and putting in a plan, putting something into place to actually make sure that there's some sort of accountability, because right now there isn't a way to hold the polluters accountable to do it. There isn't a way if it gets pushed off to a local government entity versus to a media outlet versus somebody else to make sure that there's a chain of accountability and consistency with the information that is being shared with people. And so like templating some of that out so that can be customized later is the first thing that stands out to me. But I just think like as a community member, if there isn't a specific chain of who I'm to look to be notified by, or even just knowing that the polluter is accountable, I don't always know how to get a hold of that polluter. I don't know who to contact to make sure that I'm holding them accountable to their role in the situation.
All right, Shannon, if you've got ideas or back of the napkin thoughts on how that might look, share them, because I'd be interested in following up on what that might look like.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Dan, was your hand back up, or is that a different, or Bill? I think it might be Bill.
We have Charlie.
Charlie?
Charlie had his hand up.
Okay, I don't see his hand up, but that's okay. Charlie?
Oh, yeah, Ken, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
I just wanted to respond to a couple things that were said. It seems clear that there's a need for multiple methods for outreach. Some people like Lynn, and I might include myself in that group, you know, would like something in the mail. Other people might want social media, others a website. So you have to really rely on multiple methods. The second thing, I was wondering, we've got a PFAS 101 for, you know, well owners that Abby told, you know, earlier that there were 400 people signed up and 300 plus attended actually, which is great. Has there ever been any sort of PFAS 101 for the legislative branch?
Yes, they get, well, I won't say it's a PFAS 101, but they do get, at least in the past, have gotten a lot of special attention. And every, you know, other year when we get new legislative members, they do usually incorporate us into some of their legislative briefings so that they can get educated on the thing. But we've taken the time to try to educate them as best we can. And part of their education comes from, yes, and then part of their education comes from the local official calls. So we will get some of the legislators actually attending those and listening to the PFAS MPART overview and then the health overview, and they get an opportunity to ask questions in those. But yeah, and that's a huge need, isn't it? You know, with term limits, that's a really big issue is having our legislators stick around long enough that they really understand an issue, the complex nature of PFAS, and be able to, you know, effectively do change. I think that's what they're there for, and it's a tough topic to do that in such a short period of time.
And I'd like to add that in some of these calls that we've had with local officials, there have been members from national and state legislatures on the calls. So some of them are engaged.
Mm-hmm.
If we get more engaged, it would be wonderful. But and they ask good questions when they ask them. Lynn, your hand's up.
Okay. Yes, my hand went up when Abby was speaking about the polluters and the responsible parties. All alarms went off inside. I'm sitting here right by this large cliff, and I imagine boulders falling. I absolutely think until we can hold these people accountable, which we don't seem to have much ability to do in Michigan law, that frightens me to death to think about. Kind of like it's almost I appreciate the sentiment of it and them wanting to work with notification, but I don't trust it at all. I really don't. We've got to find a way to get this changed, that the responsible parties know that the state of Michigan means business. People come first. So deadlines, kind of what was said before. I also appreciated the comments about the chain of command that Shannon made. And when Charlie was speaking, I thought, that's it. Wouldn't that be something if members from the COG could find a way to educate legislators so that it's not just like, oh, well, we're going to brief you on this, because they get briefed on hundreds of things all the time. But a time or a way where we could put this together and speak forthrightly to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because this legislature to city to officials and all that, it anybody who organizes a family camping trip know how many little things can go awry and miscommunications. But that also scares me inside, and I react viscerally to this because I've lived it and I've seen people harmed. So those just putting it out there. We've got to find a way to toughen up in our state. And maybe that way, and maybe if we can get the legislators on board, maybe that's another thing people will look to Michigan for. Hey, this group and these people, and I'm sorry, this this last thought fits in with it in terms of education. If we're telling the public what's wrong, they at least deserve to know the limits of Part 201, so that they're not expecting that Eagle's going to be able to. It's not their fault. They're just not able to because of weak law. These people have to go, really? Are you kidding? So that they also speak up to the legislators. It's got to get out there. Both issues, I think. So anyway, that's about it.
Okay, Lynn, thank you. Is there still another hand up?
I see Bob Pataki's hand
Bob?
up.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Ken. Basically, I was my ears went up when we talked about broadening the discussion to include manufacturers. I applaud that. That's great. I always have thought that our discussion has been limited not to include political and financial considerations, which have a real big impact on what we're doing. Basically, the situation that I'm in involves fewer manufacturers and more government agencies. The people who we're dealing with are wastewater treatment plants and landfills, which seems to be the case along US 23, maybe not as much so in the western part of the state, but on the east side here. We're not talking about the direct manufacturers. We're talking about government entities that are processing chemicals, et cetera, and putting them into the environment. And there are what brought me here, what brought Mary and many of the others, were situations where people, financial interests, were attempting to build something or create, add contaminants to our environment. And the larger strategy that I see is that's been going on for perhaps 25 years is to prevent citizens from having the data needed to meaningfully impact the plans of these special interests at planning commissions or various other locations. The wells have not been tested for 25 years, as we heard last night. When we do have information that shows that there are contaminants, all of a sudden the state legislature had a special deal to build a road through that particular PFAS plume, and no one wanted to talk about it, so the road got built. And there's been a great deal of that type of influence that's gone on. So if you could use that kind of leverage to gain a quick response, like Connie suggested, to actually measure the wells that are out there, what's in them, and make that information available to the public and to us particularly, would be a huge help in our efforts to try to provide a check and balance against those special interests. And I'd remind you that I've been working on this since the beginning of this COG group, perhaps. And before that, I had a few contacts with Eagle under the Snyder administration. Actually, it was MDEQ. And I have to tell you, even though I am a Democrat and I've run for local office, that the current Eagle operation is less transparent than any regulatory agency I've worked with in a long time. And I'm not saying that to be mean or whatever. I'm just putting the facts on the table based on 2 years of experience dealing with Eagle. So those are my points, and I hope you do bring the manufacturers in. That viewpoint's always helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, sir.
What jumped out at me, and this is just kind of an idea for down the road. This committee is fairly good-sized committee. We have our own kind of special interests that the areas that we look at, and maybe we would someday think about each one of us individually maybe adopting one of these PFAS sites and making that an area that we want to get out and communicate with our neighbors and with the local people.
Ken, I've actually filed a lawsuit against our wastewater treatment plant. I've been involved heavily trying to get Eagle I've actually been involved with the lawyers at AG attempting to get the PFAS recovery on the wastewater, on the PFAS site on Old 23 Thermophil.
Yeah.
And the new PFAS site that was identified at Rickett Road. The difference is that I haven't gone public with them because if you know Ann Bolin and you know the political activity here in Livingston County, then you'll understand that there's danger in doing that.
Well, I guess there's danger doing it here in Kent County too, but
Well, I've been out there doing it for the last 6 years. Okay?
And I understand that about that. That's good. But even in the smaller sites, I mean, as we see these, maybe we can be a resource for the state because we have to work together. Because everything I'm hearing is concern by everybody on this call, and we all want to make it better. And I've not been told by anybody at the state, from where I come from, that this is not an important issue.
Well, I can show you the FOIAs that all of a sudden popped up where I was being charged $220 just to begin, where before the under the old administration, I was allowed free entry to review the books. I mean, it's just a, you know, it is an attitude, and the measurements are not being, you know, the testing is not being done and the information is not being released, and that's across the state.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. I don't see any more hands. So I would like to end my committee discussion and turn it back to AJ so he can talk about the web page. And I thank everybody for all that input.
Okay. Well, I think my subcommittee report is going to be considerably shorter. Just really 2 points. One is that you know, the state is continuing to implement what we had talked about with respect to, you know, consolidating the I forget the exact term, areas of interest, and the PFAS site investigations. That's largely complete. Another thing that came up in today's subcommittee meeting, some time ago, Steve Sliber had indicated that you know, the Eagle and MPART were working on a computer mapping system for PFAS risk and PFAS sites, and the estimate that I had for that most recently was first quarter of 2022. Which would be great. I think a lot of the people on this call were there when John Esch demonstrated that system. I think about 4 calls ago now, maybe 5, and it was very robust. It had about 30 some odd layers. I want to say 32 layers of information. And what I heard from Abby today is, you know, one of the things that's held that up is finding the locations and verifying the locations of drinking water wells. And, you know, we don't want bad information to give us bad results in the mapping process. And that was the primary to-do step for getting to an endpoint for an operational system. But there are many layers that still exist, such as landfills and airports and manufacturing facilities that utilize PFAS that might still be of benefit to folks, even if they don't have information about the direction of groundwater flow. And so what we heard today is that there's a possibility we might be able to get some of those most crucial layers up and running in a mapping system that becomes available to citizens so that they can assess their own risk of PFAS exposure, which is something that, we've been fighting for a while. I remember first raising this issue with Steve Sliver in the fall of 2019. So, obviously what layers would be included, it depends on what would be most beneficial to the communities. A real risk we have is if we include a layer like all groundwater wells, private drinking water wells, we end up with a map that's basically, a solid mass of dots. And so we need to come up with a way to present the information that's actually useful to people, rather than just information overload. And, we didn't really get down into the weeds to discuss what layers those might include. But it looks like over the next month, certainly over the next 2 months, we'll have the opportunity to sit down with MPART and Eagle and discuss about possibilities of, rolling this information out there on a map-based system where someone could enter their address and find out the closest PFAS facilities near them, which would be fantastic. So we look forward to working with Eagle and MPART and getting a system like that up and running, even though, it may be phased in over time as far as the features and the types of information that we can look at. Just getting a lot of this basic information, like how close are you to a known PFAS site, would at least allow people, if they're immediately adjacent, to say even a manufacturing facility, which may be doing everything right and may be spilling nothing, at least they know that it's there, and they can still go out and get their own private drinking water well sampled if that's a concern for them. So, an informed community is, I think, something that's a goal for all of us on this call. And I'm very excited about working with the folks at MPART and Eagle to get a system kind of up and running that already exists in its basic form, as far as just, dots on the map and the PFAS sites. If you go to investigations, you get that already. But we're looking at adding a number of additional layers to that.
That's not it. Hold on, I'm going to steal the screen, Kelly, and share the right screen. Hold on, there we go. Okay, so right now, to elaborate on what AJ's talking about, right now, you can go to the MPART site and here's the list of PFAS sites. But up here, there is this interactive PFAS map. When you click on that, you end up with this map that is what we call an ArcGIS map. And it has all the different PFAS sites on it. And so there is a way to basically import additional layers of data onto this map. And so we've got, like AJ was saying, we've got lots of different layers of data that aren't turned on for public viewing yet. But I've put it out there as a charge to my PFAS data management group, who kind of do this in their spare time, to look at those, the top 5 sets of data that we could easily put out there for the public to start viewing. So, if I live in this area and I want to see, okay, what do I know about not only these sites here, but what do I know about these lakes? What do I know about stream sampling? We've got a lot of surface water data that's being collected across the state. We've got a lot of fish sampling that's being done across the state. We've got groundwater sampling. There's a lot of stuff that could be put on here. So we're going to try to figure out what are the best layers of data that can continue to be updated and are the most useful. I think you don't want to just throw a ton of data or the thing won't work properly, but the best and the most useful for the public data that we can go out there to tell the story. I mean, it's not only a matter of transparency, it's a matter of telling the story so that people have the information, they can see it, they can understand how it relates to them. And then not only do they feel engaged and empowered, but then they can turn around and help be advocates for our communities as we go. So that's the big picture. It's in process. I'm hoping, you know, by midsummer we could get a couple additional layers turned on. My intentions are to bring that back to the web review subcommittee to make sure that before we turn them on and make them public facing, that they have the appropriate legends and explanations that go with them. Because you can say, you know, turn on the well logic layer or turn on the well layer, but are people really going to understand what that means? So I think there's going to have to be a little help, hints along the way, and that's probably where we're going to need you guys to come in and make sure we're putting it in plain English, as Sue says. So I'll leave that there, but it is here. The other thing I will say is there's also a whole, on the Eagle website, there's all these different maps and applications that's out there for the public to view. So you've got already a ton of ArcGIS based web information on different platforms. So this would be a matter of just taking a couple layers from different platforms, putting them together on our PFAS map so that it tells a more complete picture for the people than having to go through 15 different platforms. So just so you understand what we're going for there. All right, there, Kelly, you can have it back.
Unless there are other questions, that's all I had for the web committee report, and hopefully we will have more information next month. Any questions? And again, encourage as many folks as possible to encourage or to attend the web committee meetings.
Okay. Before we go on to one of the final topics, because I do want to get us out of here before 8 today, Ken, I wonder if your subcommittee will be actually putting together some sort of a written recommendation or more formal recommendation. I think AJ had a pretty good outline based on his email, but what are you anticipating?
Yeah, I think that's our next step, is to come up and with those recommendations from AJ, what we shared, modify that some, take into consideration comments that have been made here tonight and the concerns of many members of the COG, and then present that at our next. I don't anticipate a need for any more subcommittee work sessions, but at the next meeting, share that and make a formal recommendation, because I think things have moved fairly swiftly, but not to my liking. I like to see things happen almost overnight, but that's just my old IT.
That's your can-do attitude. My thoughts are, I'd love something in writing, because then I can use that to springboard some additional conversations, both internally and externally, with additional stakeholder groups around the state, and saying, look, this is what we're looking for. How can you help our efforts on this? How can you guys be more transparent? How can we, I think there's ways to leverage this. So I'm kind of excited about that piece of it.
And one of the things that I think I was remiss in not mentioning, but as one of our potential groups that can really help us get the word out, is a positive media. The media can share some of these ideas of how to get the message out. That'll be great, because we're going on the right track. It's just we run into a few roadblocks every now and then.
Well, and sometimes these kinds of notifications aren't headline grabbers. They're not bad news stories yet. They're not maybe as engaging as what sells newspapers, and so maybe you don't get the coverage. So how do we, you know, again, work collaboratively with our news agencies to be able to tell those stories without having maybe a ton of the details to go with it. You're only, you're just at the very beginning stages of this. So if there's ways that we can do that too.
Okay.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate all your hard work and all the great ideas from this COG. I think you guys have done a fantastic job on this. Really, really appreciate all the input. So Kelly, if you can go ahead to we've been all over the place. This slide deck was in great shape, and then we just took it all over the place. So we've talked about these scenarios, so keep going. We've talked about what that message would be, who would get notified, and we've already gotten into public education and outreach discussion. The one thing I do want to talk about real quick is, MPART is a collaboration structure, and we've gotten a heck of a lot of things done on a fairly limited budget. All the PFAS resources you see coming out of the legislature go towards sites, and so MPART itself doesn't really have a budget. All of that budget, all of those funds you see that are MPART that are PFAS dollars go towards specific sites and actual work. So there are, I don't have a MPART fund necessarily to do offshoots of things. And so just, we're really leveraging the resources, the limited resources we have to get as much work done as we can using these kinds of conversations. So I know there was some talk about whether or not COG members had, the ability to get reimbursed for webinars or other types of training or events like that. We don't really have that ability. What I will say though is if it's an Eagle sponsored, so like this PFAS summit, you guys, the intention is to make sure you guys all get a free pass into the PFAS summit so that you can attend all week and again be advocates for not only the summit but also the COG, and I'll probably enlist you to help us tell our story along the way as well. So because I think you guys all have very powerful stories to tell. So just a heads up on that. This isn't a really, we're just doing our best to make sure we get as much work done as we can with the limited resources that we do have. So, and it's been a great, PFAS in general has been a really very well supported bipartisan effort, probably more so than any other type of contaminant or issue that I've seen in my years with Eagle. So I'm very happy about that piece of it. But we're also trying to leverage every single penny we get to do as much work as we can. So I'll leave it at that for right now. Kelly, can you go to the next slide? So we've talked a lot about educational videos and outreach. The PFAS 101, I think, was a great idea. It's sparked a lot of great things and a lot of good interests. I like using the testimonials from Jenny and Pam because I think those really make them relatable to everybody else, to the public. So there is, we were talking about maybe doing some short videos, 10 minutes or 15 minutes throughout the year to kind of build that video base of what kind of messages you guys wanted to tell from the COG perspective. What do you want to tell the public? What kind of stories, what kind of outreach do you want to tell? We have an opportunity to, if we were to put together a storyboard of what that might look like over time, we could do a series of short videos over, the next 6 months, and either, I think we could roll them out and incorporate them into the PFAS Summit. We could roll them out and have them on the website available for MPART, so that as people are trying to educate themselves about what's going on, that they're easy to view. They're out there on the YouTube channel. They're out there on the MPART webpage. So those kinds of ideas. I know a lot of you are very creative in coming up with these ideas. So think about what some short clips would be, 10 minutes or less, where you could actually get, you could help people be informed on a particular topic. So Lynn, yeah, tell me your idea. Whoops, Lynn, you're still muted.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's an excellent idea, Abby, to do that, the 10-minute short videos. And I could also see adapting some of them to be used in the classrooms. I know that the 5th grade teacher near my, down the street, where we live near Rum Creek, she gets her kids out to that creek, and it's a learning place for them. And I think it's really good to think about this next generation coming up, and also at the high school level. So it would, if a teacher wanted to do a section of study on PFAS and water contamination and other things as well, that would be great if they could have some videos that were available. So I think it's great. Thank you.
Yeah, we had actually, when we were going through the Wolverine ordeal, we did have Rockford High School at least has a very good video program, and so the students interviewed us, put us on their local television, and did a little PFAS documentary actually on the town halls and all those things, and that was really, really cool. So I like that idea, Lynn. Thanks. That's a good one.
I think we should have awards also each year, like the Oscar. I'm teasing.
Oh.
But I think, but I mean, I really think it would be kind of, it could be motivating. There's so many different ways people learn. And as I've shared before, I'm not a website person and necessarily a sequential, go down the list sort of communicator, but to surprise people, to spark people, to catch them unawares, to make a really strong point in a creative way, that could be spot on for some groups of people, right? Not for others. So to have a variety appealing to the different ways that we process information and different age groups, I think is fantastic. So
excellent. Thank you, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to probably have Kelly put this on the agenda for next month, because I think we've probably worn out ourselves on the last couple of agenda items, but I think there's a lot of potential thoughts in your heads about how to do educational videos, what that might look like, or other ways to do outreach. We don't, eventually we're going to want to start going back to personal contact again, and I'd love to be able to be ready for that too. So Kelly, what's our next slide? We can do roundtable here, but one thing before we start that, the next slide, I want to know, does anybody have anything in particular that they want to see on the agenda for the next meeting? Because, Kelly and Amy and I have tons of ideas on things to share with you, but I also want to make sure that you guys have whatever is on your mind that, we can actually either give you some additional content, or we can talk about educational ideas, or so on. So anybody have specific thoughts of what they want to see on the next agenda? Okay, Lynn, go for it.
Well, I'm kind of like Ken. I like to jump on things. I'd like to explore the idea of seeing if anyone else on the COG would like to help put together a video. I have a I have a list of ideas already. So I don't know if there's a way to even start to form a little subcommittee on that, but I'm taken with that idea. And also, I at the same time, and on a very serious note, I'd really like to brainstorm how do we get Part 201 tightened and changed? How do we? It's a long-term goal, but we need to know about it as a state and as a public. What can we do? How can we make changes? So.
All right. That I will, that's a big one, so.
I know.
we can talk more about that too, so, all right. Yep. Connie, I see your hands up.
I just wanted to maybe remind Lynn and the other folks, remember that Act 201 was polluter pays. And somehow that it used to have deadlines that you had to, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
It did have deadlines and it was polluter pays, but somehow something got lost. And again, I have to say, I agree with Bob on the lack of transparency of Eagle. Eagle will say one thing and do something else. And the FOIA requests are very expensive and you can't get them half the time. And there was some kind of transformation in Eagle that seemed to favor the applicant for whatever that applicant wants to build or put in or whatever it is, and sort of kicking the public to the curb. And I don't know how that happened, but I've made several complaints for the Southwest office about you have a consultant working and they don't follow standard procedures. When you complain to Eagle, you get yelled at by Eagle for complaining. So there's something has happened in Eagle. I can't explain it, but it used to be the 201 was very strong. Polluter pays, and they meant that. And you had deadlines, and you had 45 days to do this or whatever it was. And that all seemed to disappear now, and I don't know why. So I just wanted to express that concern because 201 was a good law, and it is a good law, just not being implemented properly. Okay.
And it's gotten, it's been amended and changed 6 times in the last 10 years. So, yeah. Connie, do you have a specific piece of that you'd like to add to the next agenda, or should we work on that as a longer term goal?
Longer term goal, I think. Longer term goal.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Anyone else have particular items that they think they'd want to add to the next agenda? Okay, because we have a couple updates that we've been putting off for a couple months now. And I'm going to look at Kelly and have her remind me. Tammy Newcomb from DNR was going to talk about, and I'm trying to remember what the topic was.
That was ecological studies.
There we go. So we do have a couple of things so we can have some additional conversations and updates on some of the ecological studies that are being undertaken. There was also the potential of having some additional talk about the health studies that are going on with the PFAS and the COVID antibody response survey that's being done as part of the MIPES. So we can always put that on the agenda, and then we'll definitely set aside some time to talk about educational outreach, next steps, and then I will give you my MPART updates, and we'll talk about additional thoughts on transparency, and if I have additional conversations with any of the other stakeholder groups around the state, we can talk about that too. So, All right. So I'm just going to open up the floor. If you guys have got any community updates or other, you know, thoughts that you'd like to share, we'll try to actually get out of here on time, or sort of on time. And so if you've got any lessons learned or new recommendations, now is your chance. And then we're going to make sure we get out of here before the sun goes down. So AJ, your hand is up.
Yeah, just I wanted to make sure we had time to consider what's hopefully going to be the final MPART comments on notification outreach.
Yep, we'll put some time on the agenda for that. How much time do you think we want to devote for next time to that? Give it another.
I would say at this point, I would want at least 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. We'll probably give you 30 just in case.
I figured it would stretch.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
AJ, anything else? Okay. Thank you. Daniel, your hand is up. Okay, Daniel, your hand is down. Did you want to talk or no?
Sorry, I was talking to a muted microphone. Yeah, so I coordinate the water trail on the Huron River here, and we're hearing a lot of questions coming up seasonally about PFAS and fish, and what PFAS means for recreation, and do we need to avoid it in foam? And we get those questions sort of around this time every year as people are planning trips. So that's our kind of big seasonal update on that. And then regarding the discussion around Part 201 and what do we need to do about that? I know there are a number of us on this call that are involved in the other threads with NRDC and Sierra Club and a whole bunch of other groups. So there are a number of us around that are thinking about that, and happy to talk with whoever wants to chat about that. In Ann Arbor, we're going through this on a very different project with dealing with the Gelman dioxane plume. So it's very fresh, I think, in a number of our minds for many different reasons right now. So happy to chat about that offline with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think everybody's got their own perspective on where 201 works or doesn't work, or what kinds of aspects could be fixed. So thank you for that. Okay, AJ, your hand is still up. Do you still have a question or a comment?
I do not. I just didn't take it down.
Okay. And Ken, your hand is still up. Do you have a question or comment?
No, I don't.
All right. Any other stretchers in the crowd that want to stretch? Raise your hand just to say hi. Because I'm not seeing anybody else's hand. Do we have anything in the chat, Kelly? Sherry wants to know when the meeting will be posted on YouTube.
So we send this recording off to our web team. They send it off for closed caption. Once they get it back, we post it. So a couple days, week.
Mm-hmm. Somewhere around in there. It's not usually too bad, but it does take a few days to get it done, and depending on how things are going. I know our internal team that does all of our town halls and presentation is literally like 4 people, and they do all of these. They've done a ton of online meetings and town halls, and all those Zoom things that are chaired and organized are literally just the same 4 people that go night to night to night. So it's a big ask. It's a big ask, but like I said, we've always tried to stretch the resources as far as we can. So, all right. I feel like, Kelly, did we hit all the slides?
I'm pretty sure we did in one way or another.
In some cases, more than once. All right, so not hearing any other thoughts, I want to thank you all for a very great meeting. I think we did a great job. I think I applaud all the, really good constructive comments tonight. I think this is all really good stuff. I know that, these conversations are having ripple effects throughout Eagle. I'm basically using this as an opportunity to share with all of my colleagues about the potential for a notification process, the potential for the public to want more information, better transparency. So it is something that's going all the way up to the directors and to all of our MPART partners as well. So I think every little conversation helps, and we will just continue forward to try to push for even incremental change is still change in the right direction. So thank you for that. Kelly, last thoughts? You get the last words.
Yep. I just wanted to remind everybody one last time where all of the subcommittee meetings are posted and this COG work group meeting links. So COG page, you access it right from the home page, right under popular pages, Citizen Advisory Work Group. Scroll all the way down, and here we have our meeting calendar. So you can access any of the links from
You're
here.
not sharing right now, Kelly,
Oh, Geez.
I mean, we can see it, but
all of that for nothing. All right. So anyway, one last time. Homepage,
COG.
advisory work.
And instead of scrolling all the way down, Kelly, right in the middle of that thing, see where it says COG calendar?
Yeah.
And then you can just do that instead of scrolling to the bottom, either way.
Oh,
but it's on the COG calendar, not the MPART calendar. So there's actually two calendars, but that's where that is.
The overall COG meeting is also on the public.
The MPART calendar. Yeah.
Subcommittees are on the COG calendar only because they are led by COG members, not led by MPART.
Yes, yes, exactly. All right, it is 10 to 8. From somebody who has 4 night meetings this week, I'm going to say goodnight and let you all go home a few minutes early. I know we're supposed to be done at 7:30, but we've been doing 8 o'clock for a while now. So let's go enjoy the sunshine before it completely goes down and enjoy your night. So have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Sandy.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Daniel.